Okay, so we're ready to get going. This is part 2 of the talk that we started last month. And this month we'll be exploring breakthrough mindsets to break free of time crunch thinking. And just a quick recap of what we did last time. Some of you might not have been here, and some of us who were here might not remember everything after a whole month. So what we started out talking about was just the amazingness of the human body. You know, we've got the mitochondria doing their thing, and the microbiome doing their thing, and got blood vessels and liver cells. So we've probably got hundreds of different body parts and hundreds of different processes going on all the time. We don't have to do a thing, and it all works to keep us healthy. There's only one thing that we need to do, and that's to feed the body right. And that's a pretty easy thing. It's just a matter of eating only real whole foods. Problem, of course, is that real whole foods don't often come in microwavable packages and snack food packs. And so what we have to do is we've got to prepare them. We've got to cook them. And as soon as you say that word cook, that's where problems arise, because we don't cook, right? The first thing we say when we think about having to cook a meal? Oh, I don't have time to cook. And I've got to tell you, like I said, I've been in the business over 30 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard that phrase, people who would love to eat more healthfully, but oh, I don't have time to cook. And it's funny because for years, I've always given people a free pass, just like, well, yeah, we live in these busy lives. I get it. I mean, you don't have time to cook and make healthy meals. But I got to say that there came a point when I said, this is an insanity. You know, in my newsletter this week, for those of you who are on my newsletter list, email list, and anybody who wants to, they can join that easily. Just put your email in the chat. But I wrote an article about, advertising this class, promoting it. It was called, have we reached peak time savings? Peak oil, peak other things, but have we reached peak time savings? Because we've got time-saving devices galore. We've got the internet to transact business instantly and automatically. And now we have Chat GPT so that we can, make ourselves even more efficient. We have people to clean our houses and fix our roofs and to wash our windows, and they can shop for us. They can even buy presents for our loved ones if we want. And got cars and highways to get us anywhere we want in a hurry. We can even socialize with friends on texts and videos. It's all very easy and easy and easy. And we even have, a lot of convenience foods that are healthy and that can make us help get us meals on the table really quickly. But here's the insanity, is that despite all our speedy advances and being the most advanced civilization in history, we don't have time for key parts of our lives, like making healthy meals and feeding ourselves well. It's kind of like, welcome to the 21st century. We can take you traveling anywhere in the world. We've got incredible houses. We've got temperature controlled environments, so you never have to be uncomfortable. We've got wonderful big houses. We've got, fabulous fashions, but sorry, what we don't have is good health, and you don't get that. Instead, 60% of you have to have a chronic condition, and the rest of you, there's a dozen more less serious, but still debilitating conditions that you can have. Now, is that just crazy that we have no time in this amazing lifestyle that we have to do the one thing that's necessary for good health? And you look at every other species, their number one objective, if they want to, continue as a species, is to feed themselves. And yet, what's wrong with our species? And this phrase that I mentioned, that, oh, I don't have time to cook. I've heard it so many times and so often and so casually. So I don't understand whether we even think about that. It's so ingrained, we just say it, do we really not have time? And so that's my question number one. I'm going to pose a lot of questions. I'm not sure I have exact answers for you today. What I have is a lot of questions, and then I'd like to, at the end, get your feedback about how you're going to answer these questions. But here's question number one. Are we really okay with settling for a lifestyle that doesn't allow us to do the most fundamental? Oops, I think we got somebody who's not muted. If you can check and make sure that you're muted. Okay, are we all muted? Ed, can you go over and just see if there should be a control that would allow you to mute everybody? Okay. So let me repeat that question. Are we really okay with settling for a lifestyle that doesn't allow us to do the most fundamental activity for our survival and for our ability to be able to enjoy good health? Do we really have the luxury of just ignoring the time issue and allow time to rob us of our health? And if you look at the data clearly says, no, we don't have that luxury. I mentioned that 60% figure. That's how many people in our country have at least one chronic condition. At least 30% have two or more. And that doesn't count all the non-chronic diseases, SIBO, thyroidism, on and IBS, on and on and on. So what the data really shows is that we're driving off a cliff to self-extinction. So all of this is to say that maybe this time issue is really something important and we ought to take a look at it. Spend a few minutes of our precious time to see if we can figure something out. So back in part one of this class, we went through a couple of things that we can do to help alleviate the time issue. And that was, let's see if I can go ahead and share my screen again. Let's see. Okay. And so the first of those is we looked at 10 quick tips to get healthy meals on the table fast. And we all love quick tips. You can do them quickly and you get some quick results. The downside, of course, is that it may not move the needle very far or for very long. You get a little relief, yes, but then, in a day or two, those have kind of lost themselves back in the rear view mirror as life goes on. And then maybe you might remember them in a couple of weeks, but we're just not it's a little sporadic and spotty. So that's why then I also shared these 6 TimeSmart strategies to create a supportive meal-making environment. And those 6 TimeSmart strategies, they take a little longer to implement. But the trade-off is that you get solutions that are a little longer lasting and that get you a little further down the road, move that needle just a little bit further. But here's an interesting thing is that even with time management, there's a question about whether can that really get us the distance? And so I'm going to put up this slide. It's a quote from Oliver Burkeman's article on why time management is ruining our lives. And Oliver, he took and researched this whole time management area because, it's really big now. There's podcasts, there's books, there's talks and blogs all on making the best possible use of our limited time. And of course, the tech industry is coming up with all sorts of apps as well. But what Berkman discovered is, in a way, it's backfiring on us, which in this quote gets to the heart of the problem with our trying to control time. As he says, the promise of being able to manage time has only encouraged us to squeeze more into a day, which is often more work. It has not rewarded us with more leisure time to do the things that really matter and lead to happiness and satisfaction, which this is my addition, like making healthy meals. In a cool contradiction, he continues, the truth is that more often than not, techniques designed to enhance one's personal productivity seem to exacerbate the very anxieties they were meant to allay. The better you get at managing time, the less you feel that you have of time to manage. So don't let me get me wrong. I'm a big believer in time management. It saved me. But I think we just have to realize that there's limits to it and that there's a bigger dragon to slay. And that bigger dragon is that our quick tips and time management, they don't solve the fundamental time insanity that dominates our food and eating culture. Time, particularly lack of time, is our constant companion, pestering and needling and nagging us all day. Each and every decision must include a hurried and harried calculation about whether there's enough time. So I'll just take a moment to breathe and say, do any of you feel that? I mean, I know I get the time anxiety as soon as I wake up. So let's keep that in mind. So what I want to present today is there another dimension to the time issue? That maybe it's not only about doing things like quick tips and time smart strategies, but also thinking in a new way. So in other words, so that rather than more tips and recipes and gadgets and skills to make cooking easier, which those are valuable, but in addition, do we need to think of a new way to think about food, eating, the cooking in the kitchen? And so that's our topic for today. And you'll see what it's written up there. Instead of bludgeoning a few minutes from the day to throw something together and try to make it healthy, what if we redefine time as it relates to meal making? What if we question its boundaries, how it works, and how it might be more malleable than we've been led to believe? Could this make it possible to make the meals that can save our health? And, you know, I kind of liken this to sports psychology. I think y'all remember that there was a time when we didn't know about sports psychology, but the experts discovered that there is winning a sports competition is as much about what's in our mind as our physical capacity. Well, I wonder if we really want to get these good meals that we'd all love, do we need a good eating psychology? And, you know, maybe that sounds crazy, but, you know, I think when sports psychology came into vogue, it was deemed as a little bit crazy too. And so I'm not sure that a good eating psychology is also crazy and odd and unbelievable. And even more than that, here's another big question for you. Do we really have some options? We've maxed out our 24-hour-a-day time allotment. You can't squeeze any more blood out of that turnip. Our backs are against the wall. And if we just continue doing what we're doing, we're not going to get anywhere. The data proves that. So is it time to be a little crazy? Think outside the box, think about something completely different. And so I want to dive into that whole new dimension of time. But first, I want to do something. I went to a summit. Didn't attend. I just watched it on Zoom. It was called a video shorts summit. It was all about how to create video shorts, which I'm really excited to do. And I hope I'll be able to share some of those with you at some point. But one of the speakers urged us that if we're going to do some video shorts, it's really important to help participants have a clear view of what their paradise looked like. In other words, what's their objective? And I think that's especially important in the healthy eating area, because I've had people tell me for years, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I want to eat healthy, I want to eat better, but I'm not sure we really always think about, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? How will I know when I get there? What would make you happy and make you feel like you're really taking good care of yourself? So And we all know with clear goals, there's a much better chance of achieving them. So the basic guidelines, of course, is we want to just eat real whole foods. The advantage of that is that it automatically limits the not foods in our diets because we're only eating real whole foods. And we want to just get wild diversity and balance in our meals. Those are three pretty simple objectives. Diversity and balance make sure that we're not overdoing it or underdoing it, and then we get all the different nutrients from all the different foods that are available. So what I want to do is just show you real quick a few screens. And let's see if we can get there. We go. Whoops. So think about what is going to make you happy with your meals. Is it because they're healthier and yummier and tastier? They're diet compliant, less stressful, more affordable, not the same old thing, a little more fun. So what I did is, this is from our meal planning class. I just put some pictures here so you can see these are from my diet. Now we're all going to be different. You like different cuisines, different seasonings, flavors, different skill levels you have, different budget constraints, but just form a picture in your mind right now about what would the meals of your dream look like. What would you be happy if you had when you sat down to the table? So these are just a few ideas to get you going. So we'll go ahead and stop that share now, but just take a minute and form that picture, and then form a picture of what gets in your way. Because a lot of times, is it time or is it some other things? What's putting the screws on you so that you can't achieve those meals that you want? So with those pictures in your mind, let's go on and talk more about this breakthrough thinking, and can it help get you around time crunch thinking and get those meals of your dreams? So the first thing we need to talk about is, where did time crunch thinking come from? And are we sure that it's true? And I'm going to guess that we never even thought about that. We just assumed that time scarcity is just a fact of life, right? And we think it's just internally generated. It's like the circumstances of my life just don't allow for time to cook, right? But actually, what you may not know is that part of our time scarcity has been externally generated. In other words, we've been programmed to believe that we don't have time. And scarily, we don't even know that, we're not even aware that this has happened to us. So let me tell you why I'm aware of this issue. And that is, a long time ago, when I was a young attorney, I was one of the first of the cohorts where there was a lot of women entering the field. So some really kind people would put on those seminars for us to help us, work on the psychological and emotional parts of being in a male world where we were part of the profession rather than the assistants and the secretaries. So one of the seminars that they put on was about helping us take a real critical look at the marketing ads around women. And so that we could understand some of the stereotypes and preconceptions that were following us into the workplace. And they showed us a lot of slides which were really like, wow, is this really what's going on? One of the ones that I remember was talking about how, showing slides of how ads for women would often show only from the waist down, which led to a disembodied view of women. I remember one ad for advertising a refrigerator with a woman dressed in a tiny little black dress. Now, what did that have to do with it? Women were portrayed as ornaments or of little intellect. And what got me about all this is just I had no idea. I'd been looking at advertisements my whole life by that time, but they just kind of went in one ear and out the other. I had no idea that I was being victimized by some really advanced psychological programming. And this is happening year after year. And now I've given this example of women, but it doesn't matter who you are. This is going on around us all the time. What cars you should buy, what vacations you should take. Women should show their love for their children by baking them a chocolate cake from Duncan Hines, on and on. Lots of these things are going on. So I was kind of surprised when I got into the marketing field, into the healthy food area, I saw this right away happening with how they marketed packaged and prepared foods, gloppy cheese all over things, and, burgers that had meat juices oozing out of them. So that was really easy to spot, but I just had no idea that somebody was marketing to us that we didn't have time to cook. So it seemed like just a totally internally generated problem. So the fact is, though, at the dawn of the convenience food era, which was back in the early 50s, found a foundational level of time crunch thinking was programmed into our brains. And I'll return to my screen share here. There, whoops, went too far. And I learned about this by reading this book called Something from the Oven. It was an historical account of our food world since the 50s, right after World War II. Laura Shapiro did a lot of research, and one of the things she uncovered were surveys that they conducted, asking women about their feelings about having time to cook. And 95% of women said, no, got no problem having time to cook. And the fact is, they probably never thought about whether they did or didn't have time to cook. They didn't have any kinds of options, right? It was just a normal ingrained part of life, because then if you didn't cook, you didn't eat, right? We didn't have all the fast food and other kinds of options at that time. And so cooking was just a normal ingrained part of life. And the fact is, women didn't feel like they needed it, they didn't want it, and they didn't even like the taste of these new convenience foods that were being put out. So this did not make the industry very happy, for sure. And so what they did is undertook a vast marketing campaign to convince women that they really didn't have time to cook. They really needed these fast, convenient, easy convenience foods. And eventually, sadly, the marketers won. They convinced women that they really did want, and they adopted the ease and convenience of processed foods. And since that time then, we have had an explosion of fast foods, drive-through meals, microwave meals, these kinds of things. And so now we have the luxury of not having time to cook. After centuries and centuries, where people have always prepared their own meals, we have the luxury of going, well, maybe I don't feel like cooking tonight. And so this is how we've been programmed this way. And I neglected to just read to you, or you might have read it as I was talking, is that this is a quotations from Something from the Oven, how marketers undertook this campaign to overhaul our whole view of what it means to cook. Step one is they dismissed as outmoded any chore more laborious than applying a finished touch to some prepared food. And then they convinced women that we did not have time to cook, even though we believed otherwise. Advertisements and stories plowed across the media, reminding women again and again how busy they were, how frantic their days, and how desperately they needed products and recipes for quick meals. And so what we have to remember is that when we think we don't have time, some of that was put in our brains. We might have more flexibility than we think. And now I'm going to show you an ad that was so interesting. This is an ad for Ora Ida potatoes. And you can see what it says there. From scratch, it says, you'll need 15 minutes to just find the potato scrubber. Or in about 15 minutes, you can just bake and serve new Ora Ida roasted potatoes, all the taste of homemade without all the work. So question for you, what messages are they giving you here? And I can name you 5 right off. First, that food shouldn't take any time. It's second, that it shouldn't involve any work. Work is bad. We want to get away from that. Third, that cooking is fairly old-fashioned. Technology has brought us a much better way to feed ourselves. Fourth, that convenience is the main objective. notice that nothing in this ad tells you all about the stuff that's in those great convenience roasted potatoes. And I've listed those over on the bedside, on the right-hand side of the picture there. You can see the preservatives and the flavorings and the poor oils. And so you don't get any word about that in this ad. And finally, it tells us that we're so disorganized, we can't find the potato scrubber right by the sink. I mean, how much confidence does that instill in us? So, and then you can see down at the bottom, I blew up the line at the bottom, dinner simplified. That's the Ora-Ida effect. So you can see why, okay, we're scrubbing the potatoes and we might fuss and fight because we know the Ora-Ida ad has told us we shouldn't have to work at making our own potatoes. And so I'm telling you this and you're probably going, oh, come on, we're not really that stupid and impressionable. And no, we're not really, especially when somebody points it out to you, you go, oh my goodness, I don't believe that at all. But the problem is we rarely take the time to really examine these ads and what the messages that they're giving us. Like I say, they go in one ear, out the other, but they stick inside your brain. And so it's really important that we make conscious effort to really think about those ads and then consciously block the messages that they're trying to implant in our brains. And the result of this kind of advertising that's now been happening for 7 decades, millions and millions of dollars spent on it, is it's not surprising that we have this foundational belief that making meals is simply impossible. And that's right where Ora-Ida wants us to be. Because if you really believe, like, of course I don't have time to cook. You don't have time for it. Maybe you could make time, maybe you could strategize, but why even try? We all know that nobody can do this. It's an unquestioned assumption. So here's another question for you. Could I be influenced by our convenience eating culture when it comes to time? Could time actually be a little more available than I think? Is it maybe true that maybe it's less than, not exactly 100% true, that we don't have time to cook? And then there's one other, so think about those things. And then there's one other marketing gimmick that it's important that I point out to you too, and that's the instant mentality that the convenience food industry, and actually all marketing has instilled in us. And it exacerbates TimeCrunch thinking because the marketing industry has cultivated this fascination with instant results. And, it's not surprising because we're in a culture that wants ever more from life, which can be a good thing. But if we can make things faster, we can do more and have more. And so if you do an internet search on instant products, it yields no less than, let me see if I can get this right, 4,910,000,000 results. And that's in 0.83 seconds, less than an instant. Now I know instant coffee, Instagram, instant passport photos, Instacart. Now we have instant pots, instant neck relief. And we've got the instant kitchen cookbook that goes with the instant pot. And so there's lots of marketing around services and products that can make things faster and faster. What this does realize is that it primes us even more to search out instant food products like those from drive-through restaurants, grab-and-go lunches, fast foods, and so forth. So just important to start our inquiry into TimeCrunch thinking by realizing that part of it is coming from the outside and we've been programmed. You may be following me and tracking with me on this, but there's a part of your brain probably that's going, just wait, hold on there. What about reality? If I look at my schedule, it really is packed. And it really doesn't see a spare moment for making meals. And so I agree that it does look like our schedules are packed and there really isn't time. From morning till night, your schedule's you've got to get dressed for work, you do your emails, you got your commute, your work, your errands, kids' activities, meetings, socializing, caretaking, housekeeping. But can I suggest to you that there's a reason that our lives are so full? Because the convenience food industry, remember, has convinced us that we don't need to worry about our food anymore. They've got us covered. So we shouldn't waste any of our precious time on cooking. Just get something from some of the fast foods that are available everywhere you go. So given this, what we've done is we've got, okay, I'll take that. And in the meanwhile, we filled our lives with all sorts of other seemingly more important things. And there's no end to the possibilities here. There's so many possibilities in our modern lives between socializing and shopping and being on social media and watching TV. There's so many things that we can fill our day with. So there's no question that it looks like our lives are way too packed to make meals. But that doesn't mean there really isn't time. And as evidence of this, can I share with you that over my years of experience, I've run into lots of people. I put it at about 25% of the population. They're busy just like everybody else, and yet they still get decent meals on the table. They might be simple, but they're decent meals that they get on the table, and they don't have a spare hour of the day that you and I don't have. So another question for you. Do our schedules, does it bear taking a closer look at our full schedules? Knowing you've been led to believe that your food needs are all taken care of, and you felt free to fill your schedule with other things, might your schedule have a little more time allowance than you think? So this brings us to this idea of a new way of thinking. And you might wonder if it's just a matter of reprioritizing, because that's a common way we talk about time sometimes. Just reprioritize your life. But I think new kitchen or new cooking time thinking goes a little deeper than that. Because a couple of problems with just reprioritizing is that our modern lives are so full of possibilities, like I was just saying. And we've got a huge bucket list in case we do get any openings in our schedule. And meal making is kind of handicapped from the outset because, like we read in that quote from Something from the Oven, the industry has done a really good job of turning it into something that's pretty old-fashioned and tedious. And so why should you sacrifice any of your favorite activities instead of doing something old-fashioned, dowdy, and trite like cooking your own meals? So reprioritizing becomes a battle. It's a constant fight against competing interests that pits you, one part of you against the other part of you. And you become an unwilling referee in this game where you've got to try to figure out, how can I get what I want in terms of time? And for this, I've got a quote here from this woman, Stacy Dixon. She answered, this was in O Magazine a long time ago, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And Stacy says, it would be the ability to manipulate time. I fight the clock from the moment my alarm sounds until I set it again at night. If I could control time, I could complete my work and still enjoy quality moments with my son and daughter. Excuse me, husband and daughter. And so you can see, when we try to control time in our modern world, it kind of ends up being a zero-sum game. And in some ways, it kind of backfires because we get resentful of cooking and we start to feel guilty that we're not making the meals that we really want. So what if, instead of engaging in this continuous fight to find a spot on your dance card for healthy meal making, what if we instead changed the underlying foundational paradigm around it? Because right now, cooking is kind of like the ugly stepsister. And as long as that's our foundational paradigm, it's not going to get asked to the dance ball. So what if our paradigm shifted, and instead of being viewing cooking as our ugly stepsister, what if you viewed cooking and took on a new view of the kitchen as, and cooking and food and eating as a revered, honored, respected, and celebrated member of the family? Like, think about a beloved grandmother. You take care of them. You wouldn't say, oh gosh, I don't have time to help my grandmother eat today. No, you'd make it work. And that's same with, interestingly enough, with previous generations. They didn't question, oh, do I have time to cook today? No, it was just a part of their lives. And I think this is especially true when we think about the Med diet and the Blue Zones diet and other ethnic diets. We get all excited about those. But really, people were just cooking the real whole foods that came from their locale. Just part of the day. They didn't really think twice about it and have to go through these and jump through these hoops to prioritize it. So, and here's just a quick screen share, a wonderful quote from B. Wilson, who's been doing a lot of, let's see, she does a lot of writing. Something paradoxical in our perception that we have too little time to cook or eat properly. By absolute objective measures, most of us have far more free time on average than workers did 100 years ago. In fact, nearly 1,000 more hours per year. So if you are ready to consider a fundamental paradigm shift, how do we do that? Well, I think what I've said is that there's got to be some precursors before you even start those. And the first of those precursors, there's 5 of them, is that just remember that mindsets are kind of squishy. They're intangible. You know, the top 10 tips and the TimeSmart strategies, those are tangible things you can do. But our thinking is not something that's just as cut and dry, like you can just change the way you think. So it may take a little time to grasp and incorporate that into your mindsets. Second, you need to be really clear-eyed about what you're up against. Remember that practically everything in our convenience eating culture militates against you taking the time to make your own meals. There's a great quote from Michael Pollan in a video that he did around Thanksgiving a few years ago. He said, you know, you're viewed as a loser if you have time to cook. And our convenience eating culture, not only does it make us feel like we don't have time to cook, but it actually elevates all these things in our lives that can replace making our own health-giving meals, being really busy, being way too busy to cook, depending upon powdered drinks and energy bars and snacks, anything that's convenient and cheap. So bottom line is, you've got to rev up your courage and your sense of independence before you undertake this mission of updating and revising your view of time. The third precursor is, don't get waylaid by the tendency of our culture to go, why isn't there just some book or program or software thing that I can buy that takes care of this, some app? We've already got all that, right? We've already tried all that. It isn't working. We need to do something else. And that's to get introspective and think about what we're thinking. And I hope this talk gives you an opportunity to do that. And then fourth kind of goes with precursor number 2 is just be prepared for loneliness. This can be a lonely road to travel. I remember, like in previous cultures, they've had a whole culture that supported them in their meal making. But I know that, like for myself, when I started on this path 30 years ago, I was a lone ranger out there. I didn't have any friends, family, nobody that supported me as I transitioned over to a healthier eating lifestyle. I think it's a little bit better today, but still, don't be surprised if it's kind of you and you alone in your family and your circle of friends going this route. And fifth, be sure to affirm your big why. Why do you care? This is going to be a lonely mission. You got to have a good, strong goal to keep you going. And like I say, in previous generations, they had a whole constellation of values that supported them. It wasn't just about health. It was about community, connection, these wonderful cultural traditions, this wonderfully tasty food, economizing, frugality. And in fact, I don't know that health was really an issue for them. That's not what got them in the kitchen, because they were already eating a diet of real whole foods. And I don't think that was their main priority. These other values were much more important to them. But for modern Americans, sadly, I think those wonderful values aren't as important. I think they kind of came back with the COVID and the lockdown, but they've since disappeared again. And I don't think they're strong enough in our culture for us to dislodge our time crunch thinking with those. I think what's going to move us more is our health issues, because there's plenty of those. And I do have to say that, every health advocate that I've listened to, except there's only one exception to this. I mean, there must be 50 or 100 that I've listened to. And every one of them got into this area because they faced a health crisis. So, excuse me, let me have a little sip of water here. So I think health is a great big why. And if that's what you got, that's fine. Use it to move your thinking to a new place. And may I just suggest that don't wait till you have a full-blown health crisis. Maybe step in and do something before that time. So, excuse me, I just got something down in my throat. So, part of what a new culture or a new paradigm does is it changes us from a point where we've got challenges come up, but instead of those challenges turning into complete barriers that stop us and make meal making insurmountable. Oh, if we can please keep yourself muted. If we can keep those, if those challenges. Can everybody make sure that they're muted, please? See, I don't think I can mute everybody, but Ed, if you're still around, maybe you could mute everybody. Okay, we hope that comes. Okay. Okay. Please, everybody, could you please mute yourself, please? Okay. So I was fortunate because we went to a naturopath, and that got us on the healthy eating track, so that as I went along, I was able to shift from a point where time was kind of a problem and a challenge, but it was no longer a complete barrier to me. I knew that I had these deep intrinsic values about how important healthy eating was. And that guided me just effortlessly. It's like an internal guidance system. It replaced the common assumptions of our culture that, oops, and here's my cat has come to join me. So you'll see his tail. Let me see if I can get him over to another cat. He should be sleeping now. So let me see if I can regroup here. I'm apologizing that I lost my train of thought here. But we have all these assumptions and beliefs that have been handed down to us by our convenience eating cultures. And it's not just a matter of changing our priorities, it's going deeper than that. We get to where healthy eating, we value it as an unquestioned part of our lives. We don't have to juggle it like priorities. They are just the way life is. So I wonder if that kind of thinking makes sense to you. And I hope you'll think about it, because I want to ask some questions, and I'm rushing here because I see that we're coming up on the hour. So I want to leave some time to ask you questions and see what you make of this. Because as I began working with others in my first years, I kept thinking, if I just give them enough recipes, if I just give them some quick tips, if I just give them some strategies, we'll all be on the road to healthy eating. But it wasn't quite enough. Yes, everybody I worked with believed healthy eating was important, but it was the same level of importance as everything in their life. That deep intrinsic belief in the power of good eating wasn't there. Instead, they viewed time as this insurmountable barrier. There's no way to get around it. And so that's why I'm doing this work of talking about, well, is there more flexibility, more malleability here with this time issue than we think? So now, how do we actually move our mind? We've got our precursors in place. We know that this is an important thing. Well, I'm sure that if there was a psychotherapist here, they would have a real fancy process that they would go through, but I'm just going to share with you the 6 steps that I went through. The first of those was awareness. And, my awareness happened, baptism by fire. We had to change how we ate overnight. But the good side of that is I learned really quickly that there was another way to think about food. Food was making us sick. If we ate good food without any dairy and gluten, though, we got healthy. So presto, I became very aware that what we ate was really important. And for the first couple of months of our journey, about all I could do was get those kind of meals on the table. But after that time, I had time to think about things a little bit better. And my naturopath gave me this interesting book called Toxemia. This thing is like 60, 70 years old, but it captured the essence of healthy eating. Because what it says is that sickness comes from the buildup of toxins in our bodies. And toxins aren't just things like Clorox or Elmer's glue or lead paint. They can be food as well. And if we eat too many of these toxins, whatever the source, our body's got to get rid of them. It gets sick to get rid of it. Okay, I get it. It clicked. I really understood this at that point. Then I got to the step 3, which was just allowing. I let that new way of thinking flow through to my habits and actions. At mealtime, I didn't have to struggle over, do I have time to make healthy meals or not, vis-a-vis all the other things in my life? There was no choice. Making healthy meals was just like, yeah, I have to breathe. I have to drink water when I'm thirsty. It was an intrinsic part of me. And then eventually, this maybe took several months, but I got to the fun part, which was the magic part. Time began to just open up on its own. And in this, despite the fact that before our health crisis, I could have sworn to you that I did not have time to make healthy meals. But as my values changed, life rearranged itself. I didn't have to fight and manipulate and try to control time. The right amount of time was just there. And even more interestingly, some things in my life must have had to disappear or drop out of my life to make room for this. But I never felt sacrificed or distressed or bummed out that, oh, gosh, I can't do such and such anymore because I've got to cook meals. I never felt that. And I've got a story about yoga where I really wanted to go to a yoga class, and I didn't think it was going to be possible because it was only at 7 o'clock. It was the only one they had back then. There weren't many yoga classes. And out of the blue, I really wanted to do this. I knew I needed to do it. But as out of the blue, my husband said, oh, I'll stay home with the kids one day a week at 7 o'clock so that you can go to your yoga class. And I was like, wow, I didn't have to do anything. And life worked itself away because I knew that yoga was really important to me. It was the start of a yoga journey that was really important to me. So this experience taught me that, maybe things work out without our forcing and exerting control, but only if it works out only if that something is really one of your deeper values, where you really want your life to be going. And that circles back to your big why. Are you sure that good eating is something that's really important enough that you'll let go of control and allow things to change up in your life? And then step 5 is just to evaluate. This was a great quote from a fellow that I listened to just this week. He's a life and business coach. It's just evaluate. If you're wondering, am I doing this right? Well, just look at your life. Look at the results of people's habits and actions, and you can see what they truly value. If you truly value something, it will show up in the way life unfolds, in the way you spend your money, your time, and your energy. And he just qualifies. This isn't meant to be a diagnostic tool. it's just, I mean, it's not meant to be judgment. It's just meant to be a judgment tool. I mean, a diagnostic tool so that you can see like, well, am I on track? And then the fourth part is just, the last step is just growth. Once you start on this journey and you're on kind of firmly embedded in this healthy eating journey, it's just wonderful how your food life just opens up. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be gourmet. It doesn't have to be complex, but it can just be a wonderful growth. Can I hold that promise out to you? It totally happens. And so we've got a wonderful story from Kristen, who was here, and she went through this same thing. And if we have time, I think she's on this call. She was on the last call. She took time to talk to me, but she was going through this process when we talked just a week ago. And if we have time afterwards, if anybody wants to share her story, she gave me permission to share it. But it followed this process quite a bit. And so I'd like to share that with you, but we are running close on time. So I want to finish up with just two qualifications. Just make sure this isn't an instant process. I know we're the instant culture, but this isn't an instant process. Don't be afraid. Don't be surprised if it takes a while. You get sabotaged by your thoughts and you have to get back on the wagon. But things do gradually, you find out that your brain really does change, your mind changes. So some final questions that you might want to ask yourself, and I think I've got these on my screen share as well, is what if time is not a fixed thing, but elastic? What if the right things get done at the right time? What if the number of hours you hack away at something is not necessarily indicative of success? And what if time can expand as necessary, kind of like a new dimension? So think about that. And I know this can take an act of faith, but if eating real whole foods is a goal of yours and it's important to you, nothing is more true and right on all sorts of levels. And so this will come to you as well. So I want to close, though, with sharing. This is part of a bigger picture. Because you remember I talked about how previous generations, they had these strong cultures that were automatically passed down from generation to generation over the centuries. And it supported their meal making, then taking time for it. And that's the point of a culture. It's to help us have a common set of values that support us and lead to a happy, healthy, and well-ordered society. Well, what the heck's wrong with our culture now? Because it's not doing that at all. And that's because we have a rotted, bankrupt culture. It's a culture that is founded on, it's created by and founded on the idea of making profits over selling not foods, and that actually detract from our well-being. So we find that our food culture is really bankrupt. And that's why we find ourselves kind of afloat and adrift in a sea of addictive not foods. We have no sense of direction how to get home, no foundational values to support us, or beliefs like an internal guidance system to guide us to a way of eating and a way of using our time that keeps us healthy. And it's a lonely place, like I said, where we have to create our own supportive culture. That's why we need courage, we need independence. But what we also need, and this is where the bigger picture comes in, we need a new eating culture that isn't bankrupt and rotted, that is supportive, that has our whole, as a society, our whole well-being in mind. And that's why I want to offer to you that the bigger picture that I offer is my advocacy for a new eating culture, which offers the space and permission and support to not only contemplate the inquiries, the kind of questions that I brought up today, but to explore and embrace other possibilities around how can we create a culture that redefines time, redefines how we go about making meals, that celebrates it, that honors it, and that respects it, so that this becomes something that we all talk about, we all like to do. And I'm not saying you have to love making your own meals, but we can all do it, and we can get the meals on the table that support our health. So we're not in this insanity of living in the 21st century with all our advanced technologies and our other advancements, and yet not being able to feed ourselves well and enjoy the good health that is our destiny. So please, I hope if you're not on my e-newsletter list now, I hope you'll join, because I'm hoping to put out a lot more information around this idea. And I'd love for all of you to join with me and join with each other, join with Ed and Bauman Wellness and all the people over there, because we can change this culture. We absolutely can. It's ours to own. We own the culture. So let's create it to support us and our health instead of the profits of those companies making not foods. So I want to thank you again. Like I said, this is my first time with this talk. I loved having you with me to explore it. And I know that I've just hit on 60 minutes. So, but I'm happy to stay as long as anybody has any questions, and I'd love your feedback. So Ed, should I turn it over to you? Do you want to, I'm going to remove my spotlight as well, so we can start seeing everybody else. I'm going to put my own view in gallery.
Sure.
Shall we go ahead and open it up for questions? Are there any
gallery
in the
view?
chat?
Gallery view. So thank you, Mary. That was really fabulous, true, inspiring, and we'll keep going a few more minutes. So I see there's some hands up, and
Yeah.
I'd love to get some questions, comments, feedback. Fredo, you're number one. You got to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
So
Fredo.
I worked in advertising for many years, and I want to say, Mary, you're so right on everything that you pointed out. But it's also another thing I think that we should point out is medicine and the things that people are trying to kill themselves with. So that's another thing that should be in our minds, because we reach out to a medicine when we work with food, and food is the medicine, or even preventative medicine a lot of times.
Yeah, Fredo, these are really good points. And I'm sorry, you were kind of cutting in and out. Let me just make sure I understand you. Do you mind repeating the last part of that? You were saying you worked in advertising, and I'm like, uh-oh, because here I am bashing the advertisers. But what was your point after that about we need to consider some other things, it sounded like?
Everything that we watch on commercials, TVs, or the internet in general. But we also get a lot of commercials for medicine.
Medicine?
So that's another one that's pretty big that I would consider toxic in the long run, and we end up using or over consuming medicines just because it's easy, instead of eating a healthy meal or eating healthy meals that are using food as medicine.
And that's a really good point, Fredo, because we were talking about those different things, like the way that we've been conditioned around time and that we've got this instant mentality. Yeah, the marketing around drugs, medicines, even maybe supplements, I don't know. But that's another thing. I think what you're saying is that we need to be mindful of what's being marketed there, because that's kind of like, it can be viewed as a shortcut to this health that we really want. And so we need to really be mindful and watching out for that kind of a thing. And Fredo, I think I just lost you, but there you are. You just moved. Okay. Does that responsive to what you're saying?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot of other things. I mean, there's a lot of other things in our lives that are distractions from this path, and they have the same marketing oomph behind them and the millions of marketing dollars behind them. And they're all, like I say, there's very little in our culture that supports us making a transition. So it's a lonely job that takes courage. Fredo, thank you so much for that comment and input. Did you say we had somebody else with their hand up?
Hello?
William?
Yes. It's interesting about the way that we have been programmed to think there's no time anymore. I have recently been fighting myself to get myself to slow down.
Ooh, good one.
And it's amazing how much you get accomplished. You get almost the same amount accomplished in the same time as if you were hurrying. Because if you hurry, you make a lot of mistakes, and you still get there on this. At the same time, you're just being slow and careful. And it also affects the way you feel. You're not as rushed, you're not as hurried, you don't make as many mistakes. And you're right. It's possible. We have definitely been programmed. Oh, you got to do it now, or hurry up, hurry up. That's an interesting perspective on it. Yeah.
Oh, William, I like that addition. So not only are we programmed to think we don't have time, but we're programmed to think we got to hurry, 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 which actually exacerbates the time issue in a way. Yeah. Kind of like the instant mentality exacerbates it. Oh, I like that. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, I'll add that to the list for sure. Thank you. Thank you, William. Let's see. Ed, do we have any other hands up? I'm just trying to look. Or were there any comments in the chat that I should respond to?
The one that I had was, we know this is true, but we're all, have resistance, barriers, obstacles, limitations, And so I think each of us has to do some reflection on that and then make some decisions around how to move forward. So for people who don't have skill, cooking can be very difficult. We talked about this in the first class. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, to answer my own question, really, is find somebody who's good at it and do it with them. Because it's not an isolated single activity. Eating is a collective activity. Cooking is a collective activity. Being in relationship, being in family, being, celebrating the opportunities, to have a meal together is something we can start to do more of. Because even if somebody's just watching and chopping, they get the hang of it and they see that people who are skilled at this, they do it rather effortlessly. But we can't make the assumption that that's something that people already have, because some people, it just never came through. So I think the collective action would be a recommendation, and then, move from there.
I totally agree. And, Ed, I talked at one point in the talk about how for the longest time, I felt like if I just gave people recipes and if I just gave them strategies and tips, yeah, right. And one of the things I did for all those years was I taught endless numbers of cooking classes, just like you've done.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely essential. But I just kept feeling that everybody would have fun during the cooking class, because it is fun when we cook, especially when we cook together. But I sense, and actually I have evidence to prove that when people go home, then that cooking went by the wayside, it died. And that's why I keep coming back to this foundational value system, is that we need something that will continue to support us long after we leave the cooking class or we watch the cooking show. And so I think all of the above need to be done, the tips, the strategies, and everything. But I keep coming back, where I'm devoting my life now is helping us develop that foundational paradigm shift to where this is so valued, so respected, so a part of our internal guidance system that we don't think about it, we just do it. And if it means that we need to learn to cook, well, then yeah, you're right, Ed. Find somebody who does it and learn from them. Take a class, watch TV, go to TikTok. I've heard a lot of people are learning to cook on TikTok. That's great. That's great.
I've got time for one more comment from Ruth Ann, and then we're going to call it a wonderful experience. Go ahead, Ruth Ann.
Hi, Ruth Ann.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much. This was, can you hear me or not?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your enlightenment. I mean, it's like I knew a lot of this stuff, but you just put it all together in a package. Yeah. And what Fredo said about food being medicine. We're not taught that food is medicine, and a lot of medicine has come from foods and herbs and stuff, but this is amazing how much has been really like out of the mainstream culture, especially in our country. And what I've been trying to do is learn a little bit at a time, like, how to use herbs, how to make things right. I mean, I feel like my whole life I've known that this type of eating existed, but I didn't know how to get there. So I'm learning now at my advanced age, and it's great. And you kind of gave it a little push today, so thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you, Ruth Ann. And food is medicine is another one of those phrases that we toss off. I mean, it's gotten to be real popular now. But I'm writing a book on this called The New Eating Culture, and one of the segments is like, do you really believe that, though? I mean, there's one thing to say, oh yeah, food is medicine as you're eating the ice cream cone, but it's translating that into, wow, I so believe food is medicine that, yeah, I'm not going to be going to the ice cream store every other day or just buying a quart and eating it every other night or something. That's part of that paradigm shift. And congratulations to you taking small steps. That's wonderful. Yeah. Really good. Very good. Good.
So friends,
thank you all.
To summarize and wrap, we're changing our mind, we're changing our lives, and really love is the key to the whole thing. Whatever we love to do, we do. So one of our teachers says, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, and there's always enough time. That's a mantra. Where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, and there's always enough time.
Very nice.
It's sweet. The next activity for us is we celebrate the solstice together. So that's Wednesday, June 21st at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. East Coast, where we get together and we honor the earth and we honor wellness community, and we make some new friends and share good thoughts. So you can go to bowmanwellness.com and sign up. It's free. I'd love to see you there. And if you don't come there, honor the earth, which is the source of our food and our blessings, next Wednesday. And keep showing up in your life and in our Bowman Wellness and Mary Collette Rogers activities. It's really important. So thank you.
One thing I forgot to mention too is that last time I think the handouts might not have gotten to everybody. So we're going to send the handouts out from one. So
all right. Adios. Be well.
Bye everyone. Thank you.